not. I physically punished my daughter and she died.
Your daughter has died?
I killed my daughter.
How have you killed your daughter?
I beat her up. It wasn't my intention to kill her, but I beat her up too much.
August 10th, 2023, a day that would shock a nation. The Surrey police received a 999 call from Pakistan. On the line was Urfan Sharif, the father of 10-year-old Sara Sharif. His voice trembled as he admitted a truth too terrible to imagine. "I didn't mean to kill her, but I beat her too much. I'm a cruel father." Officers in Wokingham immediately attended the Sharif family home in Horsell. Inside, they found the lifeless body of Sara Sharif. She had been dead for 2 days. A note left by Urfan requested that she be buried according to Islamic traditions. Sara Sharif was just 10 years old. She was a bright, lively girl, full of curiosity, laughter, and dreams. Her teachers described her as enthusiastic and attentive in class, always eager to learn and quick to help others. Friends remembered her as kind-hearted and playful, the kind of child whose presence lit up a room. Sara Sharif was murdered by her father, Urfan Sharif, and stepmother Beinash Batool on 8 August 2023. Her body was discovered in her family's residence in Woking, Surrey, England, 2 days later. An autopsy revealed that she had been regularly and severely abused. Urfan and Beinash and Urfan's brother, Faisal Malik, fled to Pakistan on 9 August. Upon arriving, Urfan called Surrey police and reported Sara's death. The three were immediate suspects, and an international manhunt was launched. They were then arrested on 13 September 2023 at Gatwick Airport after voluntarily flying back to the UK. On 11th December 2024, Urfan and Beinash were found guilty of murder and sentenced to life imprisonment. Faisal was found guilty of causing or allowing the death of a child and was sentenced to 16 years. On 1st January 2025, Urfan was attacked in prison, sustaining non-life-threatening injuries to his face and neck. In January 25, the Solicitor General's office referred the case to the Court of Appeal, requesting an increase in Urfan's sentence under the unduly lenient sentence scheme, while Urfan and Beinash petitioned the Court of Appeal for a reduction in their sentences. Both appeals were denied. Sara's murder was widely reported for the brutal abuse she had endured, raising questions why authorities failed to protect her. The Prime Minister Keir Starmer commented, calling the case awful, and said that the government would learn from her death.
My first response is a human response. This is just the most awful case. It's very hard to see and to read about for many people who will be viewing this. Just shocking. So that's where I start on this. Obviously there's going to be questions that need to be answered in relation to this case. I don't think that we should allow ourselves to think that whatever the rules on smacking are, that that's got anything to do with this case. This is about violence, it's about abuse, it's about making sure there's protection and safeguards for children, particularly those being homeschooled. So that's where I think the questions are. But my response, first and foremost, is a human response. It's just the most awful case that many people, many viewers will find very, very, very hard to hear.
Will Forster, representing Woking in Parliament, proposed an amendment to the Children's Wellbeing in Schools Bill titled Sara's Law, which would facilitate increased communication between social services and schools. Sara's father is Urfan Sharif, a Pakistani taxi driver who moved to the UK in 2001. Urfan studied at the Army Public School in Jhelum, where a fellow student described him as nearly friendless, prone to misbehave, and having different moods that were difficult to understand. Urfan's former partner, Angelica, said that he accused her of having an abortion after she suffered a miscarriage, threatened her with a knife, attempted to brand her with his initials, and held her captive in his flat. After escaping, she reported Urfan to the police, and he was detained for 2 days. The two had met when Urfan was her shift manager at a Burger King restaurant in Woking. After they separated, Angelica returned to Poland. Another Polish former partner of Urfan's, Anna, accused him of imprisoning her for 5 days. Sara's mother, Olga Dom, is Polish. Urfan allegedly met her during a trip to Poland to stalk Angelica. Olga has learning difficulties and was considered vulnerable by authorities. Urfan impressed Olga's relatives during a visit to Poland, and her father said that he had never seen a better family, but later said that Urfan was a great manipulator. Her stepmother said that she initially thought that he was a handsome and well-dressed and carred about his appearance, but later compared him to Tulipan, a Polish serial fraudster famous for seducing and stealing from women. Olga and Urfan married in 2009 and had a son in 2010. 1 year into the marriage, Urfan was arrested for assaulting Olga and an unspecified child. Olga allegedly told social services that Urfan tightened a belt around her neck, locked her in a room, and took her phone. She also said that he once tried to set her on fire and poured oil on her, but was stopped by her cousin. Olga's mother said that she knew that Olga was being abused, but did not confront Urfan, fearing that it would worsen it. Sara Sharif was born on 11th of January 2013 in Slough, Berkshire. Sara was put under a child protection plan as soon as she was born due to concerns that she was at risk of harm from both her parents. After a week with her mother in hospital, the newborn Sara was placed into foster care, with parental visitation allowed 3 times a week. She was returned to her parents under supervision in September 2013. The couple separated in 2015 and later divorced. Both children lived with Olga. Urfan then eloped with Beinash Batool, 12 years his junior, resulting in her family cutting off contact and her father disowning her. Beinash had previously been subjected to honor-based abuse and lived in a shelter as a teenager. Urfan allegedly acquired her phone number from Ram, a shopkeeper at Woking railway station. He said that they had met in his taxi. In 2019, Urfan received custody of the children, and they lived in Horsell, Woking, with him, Beinash, the couple's children, and Urfan's brother. Olga said that the reason that she lost custody was that Sara falsely claimed that Olga had hit her. In September 2013, Olga was arrested for biting one of her children, was charged and released on bail. She claimed that it happened while they were playing, but said in 2014 that she did it deliberately and was given a police caution. In 2015, social services investigated the family after Urfan was seen gesturing with a knife in his home, which he claimed was part of a zombie game. Social workers also observed Urfan assaulting Olga and them making death threats against one other. Olga, who objected to her children being raised Muslim, had little contact with her children during the time in Woking. She initially was allowed to see them often, but her visits became rarer after Beinash told her not to visit, claiming the children did not desire to see her. According to Olga, it's not normal that once the children were happy and arguing about who would talk to mom first, and then the kids don't even want to talk to me on the phone and are calling me the worst names.
I can't understand what's wrong with these people, how they allowed it. You are sadists. Although even this word is not enough for you, I would say you are executioners.
A social worker that supervised visits between Urfan and Sara said that Sara shouted at Urfan to go away whenever he came close, and another social worker said that she thought Urfan lacked empathy. One of Urfan's children told a social worker that they disliked their father because he assaulted and bruised them. Another social worker reported that Sara flinched when Urfan scolded her and that she was visibly surprised when Urfan embraced her. Sara was forced to carry out domestic chores for Urfan and Beinash. A neighbor told Sky News that Sara was treated as a bit of a servant by the pair. Neighbors told a jury that they had regularly heard Beinash verbally abuse Sara and call Urfan at work to come home to punish Sara. Beinash justified the abuse as punishment for Sara's naughty behavior and said that it was caused by jinn possession. Sara was beaten regularly and was tied up with tape with her head covered with a makeshift hood. Urfan once forced Sara to perform sit-ups the entire night because she had hidden his keys. Sara began wearing a hijab at school to cover her bruises and gave multiple conflicting stories about her injuries. After she could not explain them to her teachers, the school referred Sara to social services. In April 2023, the Sharifs took Sara out of primary school under the guise of being homeschooled. A neighbor reported that she heard constant crying and screaming, which had reached fever pitch. She also said that Beinash turned her away after she visited out of concern for the family's welfare. Another neighbor said that she heard a young girl scream in pain 2 days before Sara died. On the day of Sara's death, 8 August 2023, Sara's older brother sent a friend a text message stating that his sister had died. The same day, Urfan messaged ad hoc travel agent Nadeem Riaz, asking for 8 one-way airplane tickets to Islamabad, Pakistan. Urfan claimed that his cousin had died. Riaz said that he had known Urfan for 11 years prior to the message, and that he did not notice anything unusual. Urfan Sharif, his wife Beinash Batool, and his brother Faisal Malik departed from the UK for Islamabad on 9th August, a day before Sara's body was found. Urfan made a 999 call from Pakistan in the early morning of 10th August, shortly after he arrived in Islamabad. He admitted, "I've killed my daughter," stating, "It wasn't my intention to kill her, but I beat her up too much." He told the dispatcher that his actions were intended as punishment, saying, "I'm a cruel father." Shortly after the end of the call, Sara's body was discovered at her residence on Hammond Road, Horsell, by a police constable. Urfan left a note addressed to Sara near her body, apologizing for her death and asking that she be buried in accordance with Islamic funeral traditions. Surrey police identified Urfan, Beinash, and Faisal as persons of interest. On 15th August 2023, a post-mortem examination discovered that Sara had suffered numerous and severe injuries over an extended period. Despite the lack of an extradition treaty between the United Kingdom and Pakistan, an international search was launched in Jhelum. The police requested information 2 weeks after the discovery of Sara's body, urging anyone who had contact with her to come forward. Muhammad Sharif, Urfan's father, said that Urfan had visited him in Jhelum while fleeing, and that Urfan told him that Sara's death was accidental. According to Muhammad, Urfan was hiding out of fear, and added that Urfan was likely not thinking properly. On 12 September 2023, police raided Muhammad's house in Jhelum and recovered Urfan's 5 living children in good condition. The Pakistani government then assumed custody over the children. On 13 September, Urfan, Beinash, and Faisal were arrested at Gatwick Airport on suspicion of murder after disembarking a flight from Sialkot via Dubai. They had voluntarily returned to the UK. The courtroom at the Old Bailey became the stage where the horrifying truth of Sara Sharif's life and death was finally laid bare. In the months leading up to the trial, investigators and prosecutors meticulously compiled evidence of abuse so severe it defied comprehension. When the trial began, the public, the media, and the family waited anxiously to hear the full story, one that would shock a nation. During the proceedings, the courtroom heard in vivid detail about the sustained and systematic abuse Sara endured. Over 70 injuries were cataloged, each telling a story of cruelty and neglect. Medical experts described spinal fractures comparable to serious traffic collisions, burns from a domestic iron, scalds from hot water, puncture wounds, bite marks, and a traumatic brain injury. Witnesses recounted the isolation, the terror, and the desperate attempts of a young girl to hide her suffering. Every testimony painted a grim portrait of a child trapped in a home where fear and punishment were constant companions. Urfan Sharif, when questioned, admitted to having full responsibility for his daughter's death. Yet, in a chilling attempt to shift the blame, he pointed to Beinash Batool as the true villain, accusing her of inflicting some of the abuse on him. Despite his admissions, the gravity of his actions and the deliberate cruelty inflicted upon Sara left little room for doubt. The prosecution laid out a compelling case showing that both Urfan and Beinash had acted with intent, repeatedly harming the child they were entrusted to protect. In December 2024, after weeks of evidence, testimonies, and deliberations, the jury delivered their verdict. Urfan and Beinash were convicted of murder, a sentence reflecting the horrific and deliberate nature of Sara's suffering. Faisal Malik, Urfan's brother, was found not guilty of murder, but was convicted of causing or allowing the death of a child, a charge acknowledging his indirect role in the tragedy. The sentences imposed reflected the severity of the crimes. Urfan was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 40 years, while Beinash received life with a minimum term of 33 years. Malik was sentenced to 16 years. These sentences marked a measure of justice, yet they could never restore the life that had been stolen, the innocence destroyed, or the suffering endured by Sara Sharif. The trial was more than a legal proceeding. It was a window into the unimaginable cruelty inflicted upon a child. It forced the nation to confront the failures, the warning signs, and the systemic oversights that allowed such abuse to go unchecked. Through every piece of evidence, every testimony, and every sentence handed down, Sara's story emerged, demanding that her life and her death be remembered, and that lessons be learned to protect other children from similar fates. Inside prison, Beinash Batool entered a notorious environment. She was housed in the same secure unit as Lucy Letby, a former neonatal nurse convicted of murdering 7 infants and attempting to murder 6 more at the Countess of Chester Hospital between 2015 and 2016. Letby was branded the UK's most prolific child killer in modern times. Unlike many inmates, Letby was reportedly isolated due to the nature of her crimes, receiving constant surveillance. But in Bronzefield, she found an unlikely companion, Beinash Batool. Reports describe the two women as playing cards together, talking frequently, and forming a bond within the high-security wing. They were placed in the same protected unit to shield them from attacks by other prisoners, many of whom viewed child killers and abusers with particular contempt. Letby, described as quiet and calculating during her trial, allegedly spoke to Batool about life outside prison and their notoriety. Criminologists have noted that such alliances are rare, but can occur among high-profile female inmates who share the stigma of crimes against children. This connection between Batool and Letby sparked outrage in the press, highlighting how 2 of Britain's most reviled female convicts came to share the same space, both convicted of crimes involving the deaths of children, yet now existing side by side. In the wake of Sara Sharif's tragic death, the legal reverberations extended far beyond the courtroom. In December 24, the High Court of Justice imposed a gag order on the media, barring them from reporting the names of the judges who had placed Sara in her father's custody. The court cited a real risk of harm from what it described as a virtual lynch mob. The decision sparked debate, raising questions about transparency and accountability. However, Geoffrey Voss, the master of the rolls, later overturned the ruling following an appeal by media organizations, calling the original judgment misguided. The judges overseeing the family court trial were ultimately named as Alison Rayside, Peter Nathan, and Sally Williams, none of whom had requested anonymity. The legal scrutiny did not end there. In January 25, the Solicitor General's office referred Urfan Sharif's sentence to the Court of Appeal under the unduly lenient sentence scheme, requesting the court to impose a whole-life order. Simultaneously, Urfan, his wife Beinash, and his brother Malik petitioned the Court of Appeal to reduce their sentences. On 13 March 25, the court convened to hear these applications and delivered its ruling the very same day. All 3 sentences were upheld, and the Solicitor General's request for a harsher penalty was rejected, reaffirming the severity of the justice system's response to Sara's murder. Amid the legal proceedings, Sara's final resting place was established in eastern Poland, near the undisclosed village where her mother lived after Sara's death. She was buried under her mother's surname, Daman, a quiet tribute to the life she had been denied. Her mother, seeking to rebuild a life shattered by loss, remarried and later had another child. Sara's death reverberated across the nation, prompting calls for systemic change. Shortly after the trial concluded, Prime Minister Keir Starmer described the case as awful and pledged that the government would learn from her tragic passing. In Parliament, he emphasized the need for greater oversight of children who are homeschooled, and the Department for Education announced preparations for additional regulations aimed at preventing vulnerable children from falling through the cracks. Lucy Powell, leader of the House of Commons, echoed these sentiments, declaring the government's commitment to reform children's social care and to implement stronger safeguards for children under home education, a reform described as long overdue. In 2024, the Children's Wellbeing in Schools Bill was pressed in Parliament, which would make it illegal for parents to homeschool children if they were under social services investigation or a child protection plan. In March 2025, Will Forster, MP for Woking, proposed an amendment known as Sara Law, designed to improve communication between social services and schools. By June 2025, this amendment was tabled in the House of Lords by Shafaq Mohammed, Baron Mohammed of Tinsley, marking a lasting legacy of legislative change born from Sara's tragic story.
So today, as a result of what happened to Sara Sharif, the government published new safeguarding measures in its Children's Wellbeing and Schools Bill. Well, Aisha joins us now. What are they proposing, Aisha?
So, Matt, as I said in my report, the judge made that rare intervention, really, speaking about homeschooling. But the government has announced these measures today to try and stop vulnerable children from falling through the cracks, like in Sara's case. Let's have a quick look at what they're proposing. Parents will no longer have an automatic right to educate their children at home if their child is under a child protection plan or the subject of an investigation. Local authorities will have a new power to require any child to attend school if their home is deemed to be unsuitable or unsafe. New registers will be established to identify children who aren't in school, and all children will be given a unique identifier number. So that's similar to a national insurance number, and that's to link records across different services. Now, this is some of what campaigners have been calling for years, decades, but they've also been asking for a UK-wide ban on smacking, like in Scotland, like in Wales as well. And those are points that I put to the Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson, earlier today.
It's clear to me that the time for words, for talk of lessons learned is over. We need to act. There have been sadly too many cases where children have been failed by the state, and that's why what I'm setting out today before Parliament is a landmark piece of legislation that will keep children safe and will make sure that all of us work together to give children the best start in life.
Are you asking the Chancellor for more resources on this? Because that all sounds very well and good, but if you don't have the social workers in place, you don't have community paediatricians, you don't have police officers looking out for these children, again, these are just empty words.
I recognise the enormity of the scale in terms of what we've inherited. We know that our public services have been under enormous pressure over the last decade. That's why through the budget there was a record level of investment going into local councils with a ring-fenced, dedicated children's prevention support grant as a part of that to do a lot more to support children and families at the earliest possible point.
You know that councils are on their knees. There were figures bandied around all the time, 4 billion deficit. There's no way that they can afford to do this and afford to keep children safe in the way that you're suggesting.
They can't afford not to do it, because what we're seeing at the moment is the price of failure. You know, billions of pounds being spent on a system that is delivering terrible outcomes for children, the ever-escalating cost of private placements. My primary focus is on better outcomes for children, but this will also bring down cost to councils. We can't continue with this trajectory of spend. It's ever spiralling and is pushing councils to the brink.
Why don't you include a smacking ban in this to really protect children? Can you hand on your heart say that this is the best legislation that you can offer right now?
This is a significant piece of legislation, a seminal moment in how we keep children safe. There have been far too many examples where the state has failed children, and often across those cases you see a range of very similar factors that will often involve domestic violence, and there's a lot more we have to do as a country to tackle domestic violence. It will often involve a failure to share information between different agencies involved in children's lives. What's impossible to eliminate is the fact that there will sometimes be dangerous, manipulative individuals who will seek to inflict serious harm on those children that they are responsible for. We can't stop that, but what we can do is intervene much more quickly to take action to protect children.
But then why not have a smacking ban?
We're not intending to legislate around smacking, and the cases that you have just described are incredibly serious and are about far more than smacking.
So smacking isn't serious?
Well, the cases that we're talking about are where there has been a serious, sustained pattern of violence and abuse that has often resulted in the death of a child. I do understand the calls from others to look closely at this. We will keep it under review. I want to look at the approach that has been taken in Wales and the impact that that has had. But I think there is a distinction to draw between what people call smacking and extremely serious cases where children have been subjected to unspeakable violence.
Bridget Phillipson, thank you very much indeed.
Sara Sharif's story is one that will never be forgotten. A young life, full of that innocence and promise, was extinguished in the most unimaginable way. Her laughter, her dreams, her everyday moments, snatched away by cruelty and neglect that should never have been allowed to continue. She endured pain that no child should ever know, and yet, through it all, her spirit lingers in the memories of those who fought to tell her story. Her death exposed failures, not just of her abusers, but of a system meant to protect her. Yet from this heartbreak, there has been a call for change, for justice, and for vigilance. Laws are being reformed, safeguards strengthened. Sara's Law stands as a promise that no child's voice will be silenced again so easily. As we remember Sara, we honor her not with sorrow alone, but with determination. Her life, though tragically brief, has sparked awareness, reform, and hope for children who might otherwise slip through the cracks. Let her story remind us all, every child deserves safety, love, and the chance to grow free from fear. Sara may be gone, but her legacy endures. And through her memory, the world is compelled to do better, for her, and for every child who still waits to be heard.